Yes.
Do people have contracts with you? I don't understand exactly how you function besides an emergency.
We don't understand how we function either, to be honest with you. The question was that we have contracts. I don't know what you mean by that.
Restoration company. I would think that I would only call you for disaster. So
There's two, I can take that two different ways. One is, yes, we do have contracts with people that says in the event of an emergency, like a storm like this, that you will be like on the top of the list type of a thing, like a priority response thing. Yes, we do have contracts like that. And then of course you have contracts with, when a project comes in, at that time you have a contract with the client for that. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question,
okay, if
but...
you're a restoration company, if I have a disaster, I'm going to call you. Do I
Okay.
have you on retainer? Are you on
You
retainer?
can. You can. That's, there are companies or clients that usually mission-critical type institutions like banks or anything that has to run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They may actually put us on retainer in the event that something happens. We're Johnny on the spot. Then there are lesser variations of that where you don't have to pay a retainer, but you can be on.
Gary, this is an important point because I think one of the lessons learned would be in having these contracts in some, minimum form, because you would get the first,
Yeah, or am I just calling you when there's a disaster? You're going to have a million people calling you in that situation.
We have a million people calling us regardless. But yes, there is a benefit to that, again, depending on the type of facility or organization you are, where you have a contract where you are on top of the list. Yes, that could be very helpful for somebody.
So what would a 150 unit building, what kind of retainer would they have to pay?
Well, my recommendation is, if it's, for something like that, I'm not sure it requires a retainer. I don't want somebody to spend money needlessly. Just having a relationship where we do have contracts that we call a general contract like that. We call it a red alert, where we promise to give you priority treatment, but there's no fee involved. The top of the list would be things, like I said, mission critical, hospitals, banks, things like that that have to run 24 hours a day. The next tier would be the general red alert things where you're above the general public, and then the general public comes after that. Typically on, this is an anomaly what we're going through. I mean, like I said, I've been doing this for 36 years. I've never seen anything like this. Any of us, yes, you can call. But in the case of a storm, it's sort of like first come, first served, whereas if you had an agreement, you would be gotten to faster.
Right, so, and a retainer really, in the definition of the word is, we're not paying you a monthly. It's like, okay, you've got $5,000 of the building's money on retainer for when they need you in an emergency.
Well, yeah, the way ours works is, yes, there's a fee for that, but again, I don't know in that situation that would be necessary, but yes, there is a retainer where you pay a fee, and you are like the very top of the list. No matter what happens, we take care of you first, and then there's less.
Right, and so whenever there's a cleanup, whatever in the building, they call you, it goes against the retainer and replace the retainer.
And one of the things that I would recommend is when you develop a relationship like that, is use the relationship. Call whoever it is you may call them throughout the year with your normal day-to-day stuff, so you get a relationship going. So you get to know how everybody works, as opposed to just being there in case of a storm, that may not happen for 20 years. And then when it does happen, it's almost like starting from scratch because no one knows anybody. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Right, and you also know the building, because one of the things Jamie pointed out is that the building that went up online faster was the one that you had already surveyed and you knew all its particulars.
That is correct. Thank you for mentioning that. One of the things we do with these is we can survey buildings like that, so we know where all the facilities are and who the players are, who the authority figures who we have to report to. All that kind of stuff should be worked out beforehand, so that when something does happen, it just snaps into place.
I have a question.
Yes.
Erwin, you want to just use the microphone? Thank you.
I'll use the microphone. I'll try to use the microphone.
Okay.
This is the topic of our meeting today is emergency preparedness.
Correct.
Lessons learned, and as a property manager, I know that we go through our business, as property managers know, we have to do asbestos remediation and various other plans that we're required to have in place. One of the things that I know I've experienced with some of the properties that were damaged in this hurricane is that we need to do more planning. We need to develop a plan, not just what to do in the event your power goes out, but emergency preparedness. So I have a two-part question. One, how for yourself as well, what are your firms doing in terms of planning to get ready for major disasters such as this, so that mobilization is effected quickly, contacts, communication, facilities, manpower, location, so that when the call comes in from us to say that my lobby is now under 6 feet of water, we're trapped because the tunnels are flooded and we have no gas for our trucks. So one, what are your firms doing to help us prepare for that? Two, and I think you just answered that, if I wanted to bring people like Jamie from Rand and your firms in to do emergency preparedness planning, which takes into account all of the things that we have to deal with, which is physical, emotional, how do we get people in and out of buildings, what to do about all of the aspects into a major plan that can be published for the industry, because we are getting more and more problems. There are windstorms, hurricanes, and earthquakes. As you all know, we recently had one of those.
Is that the next thing?
We haven't even, addressed that. So, if you could.
Yes, there's...
What was the question? I talked so much, I forgot what I asked.
The first thing is, what do we do for... I can tell you what we do when we know that a storm is coming is, again, we're a large company, so we'll start as soon as we know that there's a storm out there and that there's a projected track that it's going to hit New York, let's say. We will, as soon as we know that, we start having conference calls with the affected offices. We have like 5 offices in this area, Jersey. We just opened up an office in New York City, Long Island, Connecticut, White Plains, and all the surrounding, Philadelphia, Boston. We'll all be on conference calls. Our national office will start migrating equipment and certain like project managers and estimators and people like that. That starts migrating to the area so that, and it shifts day to day as the storm shifts. We'll move equipment around to try and be within a few hours of wherever it hits so that we can be on the ground running. That's some of the things that we do to prepare. As far as planning for you guys planning, I have mixed feelings about that, because you can over-plan, and I'll tell you that every disaster is different. You can't anticipate every eventuality that's going to happen. The beauty of planning, though, is that you establish certain things. You establish who's in charge, who you're answering to. You might do inspections of buildings and things like that, but preparing for every single eventuality, you really can't do that. If that makes any sense. Who was it? Eisenhower said that planning is useless but indispensable, and what he meant is that no plan ever works out. What's that expression? The best laid plans of mice and men often go astray. The actual plan that you do may not work, but because you've gotten that mentality of planning and you got all the players together, you can make decisions and veer away from it whenever you have to. So it is important. Just I just don't want you to get so bogged down in the details of it that it becomes so minute that you just can't operate. Does that make any sense?
It does, but all wars are won in the conference room first, right?
That's true.
Okay.
That's true. That's true. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Not even one winning lottery game?
No, we'll have plenty of questions though. So Howard White from Maxons, but I just have a comment. In your getting your staff staged and ready, to respond. I think what we need to do is, what we found is we had a couple of staff members who were there the whole time, and some staff members who couldn't get in. So if we know a storm is coming, maybe what we can teach the union members is to confer with themselves. Okay, who has to be home? Who can be away from home? We got it coming. Who can overnight at the building? Do we have the sleeping supplies at the building? And so the property managers want to institute this into the staff to get used to this coming together and planning on their own, because the property manager is going to be emailing and having their own issues. So spontaneous, the staff should be able to self-plan and say, okay, I can stay here for the next 3 days, and so don't worry about trying to get in, and do that on their own. Howard.
I like to walk around a little bit. Thank you all for coming. I think the fact that you're in this room shows that you have a big desire to be proactive for these kind of things.
And Howard, all you have
My
to
name
do
is
is hold
Howard.
post.
How's that? My name is Howard White. I'm the Executive Vice President of Maxim's Restorations. We're a disaster recovery firm located here in the city for about the past 60 years. All we do is serve the property community on doing disaster cleanup for co-ops and condos and all other kinds of properties. I've been doing it for 21 years, and as Gary had mentioned, I've never seen anything like this ever. I think the toughest part of the storm for me was having my mother-in-law live with me for 2 weeks. And you know, if you think that Sandy did a lot of damage, my sister-in-law's idiot kids destroyed my basement worse than any hurricane. Seriously, I mean, it's just not that funny, but you know, I think that in preparing you guys for this for any kind of event, I want you to just think about, there's like 3 critical areas I want people to remember. Number 1 is the relationships and resources that you have to plan for, that you need lined up. So number 2 is going to be the fact that this is not a regular job. This is now an insurance claim. So rules are a little different. And number 3, I want you to think about communication. Communication with your tenants, communication with your boards and ownership. I'll give you an example, and I'll kind of feed into all of them, and then I will answer part of your question. So we're doing this big group of buildings downtown, and it's one of the largest rental properties in the country. And it was right near the East River. So the river comes up, and it floods out about 15 different basements. Similar type buildings, all residential units, about 15, 18 floors. And so picture, actually before I go into it, who was impacted themselves in their own buildings by the storm? Just show of hands. Okay. How about your own homes? Anybody? Lucky group. So now picture you're standing in the basement of your own property, and now it's got 8 feet of seawater and mud and silt, and you're right there. And think of every system that's now destroyed. You have your HVAC, all your boiler, your steam system, maybe you have a fuel tank, and that is all displaced. And you have fuel oil all over the place. You have, as Gary mentioned, Category 3 water, which is crap, and you know, it's all other kinds of bacteria and other issues. Your electrical system is completely submerged. Now, maybe you have tenant content stored down there. You have storage lockers in your basements, right? Now, complicate, every system's wiped out, and all your tenant stuff is down there, and the building's completely shut down. You're basically adrift at sea, you know, and actually that's not a bad analogy. Picture like your preparedness model is like building Noah's Ark, and your building is the Ark. And what do you need to get on board, and what do you need to have at your fingertips so you can sustain the property? I guess good thing of being at sea is you can toss the annoying board president overboard when you get sick of them. So now we're doing these buildings. It's a pumping emergency first, because you have to get the water just out of the building, just extraction issues that you have to figure out first. Then it's about stabilization. And we had a tremendous amount of challenges just getting people to different sites, getting emergency power. You know, generators were a real scarcity. I mean, I had to wait online for a generator for about 5.5 hours to get one from my mother-in-law's house.
Gladly did it.
Right. Well, you know what? There's a lawyer on our panel. My mother-in-law is also an attorney. So I didn't really have a choice, because, you know, I have to act reasonable as a son-in-law, or I'm screwed. So, all right, so picture, every system is completely submerged. Now, you have to think about all these issues. So, we had every single challenge there was in basically flooding out an entire basement with this. So getting rid of all the stuff. Now think about this, in a normal scenario, you know, you have a contractor come in, you have a contract, and specific things are laid out, you know, put the bricks here and fix this pipe, and this is totally different. Now this is an insurance claim. And it's not like any other regular project. You have to think about what's your insurable interest for your building. Because in any given claim, there's different carriers involved. There's the coverage for your tenant's property. And, you know, often you may get boards putting pressure on you to say, well, get all the tenant stuff out, or, you know, gotta do this. Well, guess what? Your insurance policy may not cover you handling any of your tenant's property. So you're gonna go through, take all that risk, and put all that stuff somewhere, or handle it, and now you're exposing yourself to not only a lot of expense that you will not be reimbursed for, but you're also now exposing yourself to additional liability for the tenant's property. It's not a regular job, and it's an insurance claim. Now, again, you may be asked to do things that are just not in your insurable interest. We've had this issue many times in the past. Now, also, I just want you to think about, this is such an extreme example. I want you to think about just garden variety disasters. You know, if there's a pipe break in the building and it floods the basement, or if there's a fire issue or something, you know, in comparison, any of this stuff, the garden variety disasters are going to seem very easy right now. The other thing is the communication with tenants and ownership. Keeping tenants in the dark is very dangerous. Not the literal stuff when there's no power, but sending memos to them proactively about what you're going to do, what you've done already, you know, regular status updates, even if it's just a printed sheet in the elevator. Some communication is better than nothing. I mean, we've been in situations right now where the ownership of these group of rental buildings, you know, it looks a little bit weird to tenants when you see giant generators ducting in air and huge desiccant dehumidifiers pumping in air to the basement. And, you know, tenants want to know what's going on, and there's invariably issues where people say, well, you know, what are they hiding from us? Or, you know, what's wrong with the basement? Is there asbestos, or is there a problem down there? Is there mold? I mean, and the answer is probably yes to all those things. There's maybe some ACM and LBP stuff. Maybe there's mold issues. So communicating proactively with tenants is going to be a very key thing. And one thing that we say in our firm all the time is, if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. Yeah, this is an emergency situation. None of us have time to say, oh, well, you know, we're just going to write up a contract for you, and here's going to be how much it's going to cost to dry it out, and here's what it's going to be. There's no time to do that. But to streamline things, one thing that we've done is we've made short-form contracts that have like minimum requirements. It spells out groups of things, so we can maybe give some kind of like ballpark price. But again, it's not something, this is an insurance claim, so it's totally different. We may ultimately be sending your building the bill, and however much insurance you have on that policy is something that, you know, we're going to be working from. The proceeds of your entire, however much the value of the policy is, our bill has to come from that. So we ultimately have to answer to the insurance industry as well. We all sort of live and die in the insurance community. You know, I think that companies like us, we have one foot in real estate and one foot in insurance at any given time. And the thing is this, we sort of act like an interpreter, like an adapter. Generally speaking, and I know there's lots more people in the room, but real estate people don't necessarily speak insurance language. And at the same time, the insurance people don't necessarily speak and understand what's really important to you as property professionals. And there's often a lot of competing interests. You know, you want to make your tenants happy, your board's happy, you have an obligation to correct issues in the property and get them whole. And the carrier, you know, they have a contract with your building as well, and they have to basically put it back to a pre-loss condition and make you whole. But, you know, they have a lot of expense. They want to minimize what their expenses are going to be. So, you know, again, it's, if you just walk away with nothing else today, just think about what relationships do you need with different vendors. Again, I'll just walk into that a little bit more. Besides disaster recovery people like us, it's going to have to be your electricians, and not just the one guy that's done a good job for a few years. Something catastrophic is going to require more than, Joe's electric company. You're going to need several resources. Suppliers like, I don't know, it could be from janitorial and cleaning supplies, all your plumbers. Just think about, again, if every system failed in your building at once, what do I need to do to get that back up and running? What about additional labor? What if there's just not enough staff? Do you need backup staff? What about security? You may need additional security issues going on. So again, your fuel companies, anything that services your building, examine that, keep records of that, put that information in many different places. Don't just rely on that, the fact that it's all on my computer, because your computer's not going to work. Old-fashioned print things aren't a bad thing to have. Have that information disseminated to every single person in the building, everyone in your organization. Because again, a storm like this may never happen again, but if you're prepared, then it's going to be a lot easier. So the resources are really key. Wasn't there an insurance person that was supposed to talk? I wanted to go into that.
He got stuck writing up a claim.
Insurance guy not here when you need him.
Doing an adjustment.
Okay. No, they're good guys. So your question about preparing, what was that part two?
Plan.
Just a plan to
Okay.
be ready, mobilization.
Right.
What can you do to anticipate?
Right. As Gary mentioned, we all do catastrophe planning. We call it CAT planning. So we all have, resources that we have to assess. We move in equipment, material, supplies from other areas to sort of strategically position. You ever play Risk as a kid? You look at the board and you see where everything goes. We want to deploy our resources close to where there's going to be an event. So that's what we do. We have our own internal catastrophe planning manuals about what do we need to do, how do we need to respond. I'm sure that Belfour has something very similar, if not even better. So you guys are the biggest. Yeah, question?
In my practice, I'll often get a call from a client with insurance denial or reservation of rights. And when I look at the policy, I often see other ways a claim could be presented. Can you talk about the importance of presenting a claim in the proper manner on day one, and the things that property owners and yourselves could do to increase the likelihood of the claim not being denied?
Sure. How many of you have taken estimates from contractors and it says, repairs, sheetrock, $5,000, okay? None of that's good for an insurance claim. Insurance companies need detail, and they're just making people's lives miserable right now where they're not accepting these sort of, larger chunks of bills. The more detail you can put into any different aspect of your claim, the better. And the way we have to write up our jobs is either all time and materials, everything documented, sign-in sheets. Anyone that enters your building, you better keep a good record of it. Anything that you buy that's consumable, that you can need to be reimbursed for, you better keep all your receipts. If you have to buy things like, masonite or flooring materials or drywall or electrical part, anything that you have, you better keep good detailed records, because that stuff's all reimbursable. Without a clear list that's delineated, you're not going to get that money back, or it's going to be very difficult. When you're making any kind of claim, and we also may have to measure everything out by the square footage. So insurance company just love detail. So rules of thumb you can remember, the more detail the better. And anything you can photo document, the better. Any photos of damage, because look, a lot of times you're going to have a claim, and the work's going to get done, and things are going to get cleaned up, and by the time the insurance adjuster comes, he's going to say, yeah, the place looks great. What damage? I can't see it. I don't see any damage. Well, you got to have backup. For, again, as I mentioned, the garden variety disasters, you have a fire in some area, don't disturb the fire scene. You may think that it's okay, and once the fire marshal comes from the city, it's not okay, because that is just a city agency. There's still going to be a cause and origin investigator that's going to come from your carrier for your building, and possibly a cause and origin investigator coming from the tenant's insurance company. So you may have 2 other people to deal with. And until that site is cleared and that they say this is exactly what happened with the fire, it's okay to clear it, if you disturb that scene, you're either jeopardizing your own claim or your tenant's claim. So those are just simple things to remember. Any other questions about disasters, cleanup? Sure.
Would you recommend that in most cases, whether it's a fire, flood, or something that's a lot less severe than a hurricane, earthquake, including those two, that you recommend to the property management and real estate owners that a public adjuster be contacted just about the time that you make the call to put the claim in, so that you have an individual who's going to represent you in the proper way, not necessarily rely on the insurance company's adjuster, so that whatever has to be placed in the hands of the insurance company is done properly to assure the highest, reimbursement under the insurance policy.
Sure, I can expand on that. Everyone clear what a public adjuster does? Not clear? Okay. Public adjuster is basically someone that you hire. You basically give them power of attorney over your claim. They become your representative against the insurance company. It's like hiring a lawyer for a property damage claim. And again, I think that public adjusters serve a very valuable purpose. If you have a catastrophic claim that's really complicated, let's just say a house burns down to the ground and there's just not much left to see. A catastrophic loss like that, that's a lot of work to put all that together. Are you going to go back through the rubble and count all the stuff that you had and clothes, and you're going to put that spreadsheet of 50 pages of inventory together? No, chances are you're not going to want to do that. A public adjuster hires an inventory company to do that. And again, they bring resources to a claim that are really valuable. If it's a small claim and you have a small issue, you know what? You don't need it. Public adjusters charge you a percentage of a fee, a percentage of the proceeds of the claim. So it could be, 10%, it could be less. Again, the larger the claim, maybe the lower the percentage of the retainer goes. But if it's a small thing, you probably, first of all, public adjusters probably don't want to take a small claim. It's not worth their time. And it's not worth you throwing good money after bad for something like that. But a public adjuster can be a very good advocate for you if you're faced with, let's say, an adversarial adjuster. In the insurance claim process, you don't know who you're going to get. What if you get this guy who's a jerk and he really, he had a fight with his wife in the morning before he came to your claim and he's really just not happy? I mean, I've seen it happen. You don't really know. It's very important to have a tight relationship with your insurance broker because they're your first advocate. And maybe the broker has a public adjuster of choice that they like to work with, that they're comfortable with. So you want to ask a lot of these questions. Again, think about it in terms of is catastrophic loss or is it just a pain in the butt loss that is going to, you don't want to do that. You have a question also?
The license are certified in New Jersey or New York, public adjusters?
Public adjusters in New York and New Jersey must have licensing. They have to have, CE credits, and they have to do the upkeep as well. I mean, they're claims professionals, and you know what? They're doing not just the physical damage, but maybe they'll calculate your business interruption, other loss of use issues. So a very big claim can get complicated. They need to have certification.
Who oversees that?
Statewide, I believe it's the New York State Insurance Department oversees it. You know what? Years ago, public adjusters got a really bad rap. There was a lot of corruption and collusion cases, all very public. I'm not saying anything that wasn't public record. There was a lot of fraud issues. Talk to your brokers first. Your insurance brokers have relationships already with these insurance professionals, and they'll be able to guide you best. Sometimes it's not necessary. Sometimes your broker has a claim prep department, and they bill the carrier for the preparation of that claim. So it could really go either way.
I would say that my peers are probably hiring a public adjuster, and if a board said to me, well, didn't we get a public adjuster involved in this? I don't want to say no. So.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
I just want to add to that a little bit. From my perspective, a public adjuster is super important, especially on a larger claim. One is, for the exact reason you said before, they speak the same language as the insurance carriers. It's huge. They know what the carrier's adjuster wants to hear. So that's one. Two is to throw work away from myself and other lawyers. Once a lawyer gets involved with an insurance claim, and sometimes it is necessary, but once the lawyer gets involved, the insurance adjuster sends it to their legal department. As a property owner or claimant under a policy, that's the last thing you want. You don't want your claim to go to the lawyers in the insurance department. You want to get it approved and adjusted before it goes to the lawyers. Once it goes to the lawyers, it's very hard to get back to the adjuster.
It's like a black hole.
Right.
The claim never comes back. It takes a long time, and it's very problematic. Yeah.
Exactly.
Hi, are public adjusters sometimes attorneys as well, or never?
I only know of one in the area, actually a guy out of Boston. They don't have to be, but you know what? It's an area of expertise. Public adjusters know insurance claim law backwards and forwards. They don't need to know tort law or other issues, so it's not necessary. Yeah.
During this emergency, Cuomo was coming on the news saying, instead of keeping your damaged furniture on your property, take pictures now. Is that not standard procedure to just take the pictures and be able to do away with the damaged items?
You know, I think Cuomo was doing that to expedite the process because, you know, with 100,000 buildings, homes damaged all at once, there's just so much stuff that needs to get done. I think in a normal circumstance, you know, since it's a contract that your insurance policy is a contract with the carrier. I guarantee you 99% of the people don't read every line in the contract. And you know what? By throwing something out, you're just jeopardizing your claim in a normal circumstance. This was something extreme. But in any claim, just photo document the hell out of it. And you know what? Then you're going to protect everything you do to protect yourself, to mitigate damage for your clients, for your tenants. Anything you can do, again, to be reasonable and prudent, you have to mitigate as much as possible. And you know, think about the claim as like a little corporation. You know, you have to fund it at first until you're getting reimbursed. You have to basically build it, staff it, and you have to run that claim like a business, not just for yourself, but you know, you're obligated to your tenants. I mean, you're all in the management game of managing properties. You could do everything right all through the year. Everything's great, you know, your local law 11 stuff looks good, you got your upgrades, that's awesome. Fail in a crisis, and you may not get that contract again, and that's where things go wrong. You know, we always say, you know, you could do a million things right and then no one notices. Like Gary said, no one wants to see us coming during the rest of the year. It's like, oh, here comes the Grim Reaper guys, the disaster guys. But, you know, when you need us, then, you know, it's a different story. So just be practical about these things. You know, it's not rocket science what we're doing. But, again, just being proactive. And again, think about those three things I said is what resources and relationships do you need? That is when it's a claim, it's, you know, this is an insurance claim, it's a little different, and communication. Almost all these jobs or claims or any business venture goes bad when the communication isn't right. So just the more people you communicate with, the better. Tenants, brokers, other property management groups, just finding out what's going on, it's really key. It will save you a tremendous amount of headaches later. Any other question?
One of the things which you talk in terms of taking pictures before you throw things out, be proactive. With your smartphone, take pictures of the areas before anything happens, and you keep a record of that, so that when you have to prepare a claim, you'll have all the documents.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything you do proactively to survey the property, you know, store that disc in a safe deposit box, or, you know, keep that information off-site. Anything you can do to show what your pre-loss condition is, it's valuable. Any other questions?
Okay, one more, and then
Do most insurance companies have a time period where you notify them of the loss? They have now within some reasonable period of time?
okay, maybe David could answer that question. Yeah, because the notice of a possible claim versus a claim, and many of us have said, oh, we don't want to let the insurance company know because it'll up the reserve they have to have for us, or so David, is it correct that it's the most reasonable time, as soon as you can inform them of a possible claim, and then, right, it's that reasonable time period?
And then when they have to come out, it's really the question. You're sitting there with damage and, you can't function.
Yeah, let me, I think you got the question. Let me talk to you. I thought there would be an insurance expert on the panel. There isn't. So let me talk to you about a few legal aspects of insurance claims. One is notice, okay? The law requires that you notify the insurance carrier timely. Now, in New York, insureds, meaning in this case property owners, have recently received a big win. New York used to be very, very protective of insurance carriers. Now they're just very protective of insurance carriers. One thing that the law has done was changed the decisions with respect to late notice. It used to be that any late notice in New York State was grounds to deny a claim. Again, it used to be that way. So if you were late in providing notice to an insurance carrier, your claim would get denied, and that denial would be upheld by the courts of law in New York State. The decisions now, and the rule now, is that the late notice would have to result in prejudice to an insurance carrier. Okay? So if an insurance carrier could show that they've been prejudiced in some way by the late notice, then the claim's denied. But if the insurance carrier doesn't have any prejudice to show, then the claim cannot be denied because of late notice anymore. Yes? It depends on the circumstances.
And the language of the policy.
Well, not anymore with respect to the language of the policy. The policies say that you have to notify the carrier as soon as the insured knows about a claim. But not anymore, notwithstanding what may be in the policy. The courts have held that as long as the insurance carrier cannot show prejudice, they cannot deny a claim for late notice. Now, what's timely is dependent on the circumstances. It's certainly before a property owner repairs any damage, right? Because if the damage is repaired, then the insurance carrier would certainly have prejudice because they didn't have an opportunity to inspect the damage. It could be before a bill is paid, right? Because then the insurance carrier does not have an opportunity to review the bill and possibly get other estimates. So it does depend on the circumstances, but certainly a line in the sand would be the correction of damage.
Yeah, also, carriers, like the courts, they hate surprises. So the quicker you do it, the better it's going to be. If you want to gather your information, you could put people on, you can put a carrier on notice.
Put them
right
on
away.
right. It's developing that relationship with your insurance carrier.
Right.
Right. One other issue I want to talk about insurance real quickly, then I'll sit down, is as my colleague on the panel was talking about with respect to dollar amounts and getting those together in a proper manner that can be accepted by the carrier. Another issue is whether there's an occurrence under a policy. And in property policies and builder's risks policies, which are property policies for buildings under construction, there's three really hot areas, and you should remember these. Because if you have an occurrence under a policy that relates to these three areas, you have to be very, very careful in how the claim is reported. Okay, so the first area is water. Some water claims are covered under a policy, and some water claims are not covered under a property policy. The second is settlement. Okay, a lot of settlement claims are excluded under a property policy, but not all settlement claims. It depends how the settlement has happened. And finally, a hot topic over the past 10 years is mold. Now, mold can be covered under a policy, either through the policy itself or an mold endorsement, environmental endorsement to a policy. But you have to be very, very careful in how you report it. When an insurance carrier sees a claim in any one of those three areas, major, major flags go up. And the way it's reported to a carrier or even a broker could be dependent on whether it's ultimately accepted or denied by the carrier.
That sounds like a good topic for another seminar.
Thank you, David. So Howard, thank you. Okay, that was excellent. And we're running a little late, we're not going to go that much later, but we have Ephraim Lopez, who is the resident manager of the OM, has some comments because he lived through some of this. I'm going to cut you a little short, so do what you can, and then Jamie's going to come back up and go through the quick review of the building that got online fast, why, what was unique to them in their preparation, and the building that's still not online, what has held them back, and then any other final comments?
Good morning. I'm going to run it really short. Most of the topics and issues have been already discussed. But from a practical point, I lived it. I've lived that one. In the past 32 years, I've lived a few explosions, a few fires, a few floods.
Just hold it close.
And lucky me, my mother-in-law wasn't there. But nevertheless, it was a challenge in every single incident that I
So your building
had to address over the years.
Far west side. So your building's on the far west
My
side?
building's at west side. It's the OM, 312 11th Avenue, managed by Clinton Management, and it was built by Jeff Levine. We were affected. We didn't get the damages of water, though our other property in 23rd Street got at least 4 feet worth of water in one part and like 10 feet of water in the other part. So I was part of that restoration there. But a lot of things have been discussed. One of the things that I continue to hear and continue to experience in my career is training. And though we go through a lot of floods and a lot of situations, dealing with a lot of properties over the years, I still find the lack of training. Everything from, does your staff know where the fire pumps are? Do they know what a fire station is? Or where is it located? Or how do you reset it when it's blowing and ringing and people are saying like, shut that thing off already, but people just don't know how to reset it. Training the guys of where the equipment is, taking pictures. We talk about, I worked with Max on in one of my properties where we had a major flood. And one of the things I've learned over the years is walk around with a camera and take pictures, and take a lot of reports. So when you sit down, you sit down with the board, or in my case, when you deal with my chairman, and we're discussing what happened, here are the PowerPoint of everything that happened, and here is the brief explanation or summary of what we saw. Safety.
Like a diary.
Like a little diary. I mean, now we have BlackBerry, so just making little points. And I know that while you're dealing with tenants or residents or owners that are going ballistic or going crazy, what the hell are we going to do? The professionalism and the training falls in place for you to keep calm, have a smile. Does anybody have a smile still? And kind of use it once in a while. And know the PR, how to deal with the people, how to be a public relation individual, how to touch the little, I'm not big into dogs, though I have 2 of them, my wife has 2 of them, but you'll say hello once in a while. The child, you're so cute, might be ugly as a dog, but hi, how are you? And just have that PR to deal with the people, and you find that the pressure goes down. Well, my main issue was lighting. You don't have light and people go panic. And that was one of my main focus, of safety, security, lighting, the basics. The rest of the things that, I have an emergency cart. I have so many things over the years that I've developed of how to deal with it and how to use it and all that. And all that is great. But, when the emergency is there and you're running around, as we say in Spanish, like a chicken without a head, if you really haven't been trained on how to use it, or how to deal with it, then all you're looking at is at a big cage with a bunch of stuff and you're saying like, okay, now what you do? So my advice as a resident manager, and one that deals with different phases of management with my building over the years, is that train your resident manager, train your porters. My requirement in my building is all my concierge, they must take the standpipe and sprinkler test. There's no question. There's no opinion, you're going to take it. And you're going to learn how to deal with standpipe, with the fire department. Does anybody know where your fire department is? Or where is your nearest police department? Or some of the basic
that's that
things. Relationship again. So, anyway, any questions? You'll see me later and enjoy your holidays.
Thank you, Ephraim. That was excellent. So, as you hire staff, think, how will this staff member react in an emergency? Will they be able to keep my tenants calm? will they make the extra effort to get in? Will they make the extra effort to stay overnight? So let's hire right from this point forward. Okay, so Jamie, you're going to give us that fast review. And then the speakers will be here for you to interact with.
All right, so just to recap, for the buildings that recovered reasonably quickly, what the common theme that they had was proactiveness, as Howard and Gary mentioned, that once you get momentum from this devastating situation, you have to maintain momentum. So being proactive, thinking out of the box, just a couple of examples of proactive thinking, especially it's critical by the board, is that for the building that came up fast, where they got their source of temporary power was a neighboring building. That neighboring building acquired an oversized generator that was more than enough to handle both buildings. So one of the board members made a phone call to the neighboring building owner and said, hey, can I tap off your generator? Now, in order to do this, they had to agree to a bad contract, but better to agree to a bad contract than not have any power at all. So that was kind of the out-of-the-box thinking. And then also the board was very proactive with thinking of other areas. We were all thinking, but you can't at all discount the importance of the board being present. And then for the building that is still, kind of flatlined, it was the polar opposite. That I think that this expands on what David was saying, is doing what's expected to be reasonable. Well, in an emergency situation, I think a lot of us would think that it's not reasonable to expect reports and etched in stone proposals and that type of thing. It's kind of, you need to say yes right now if you want your systems to be restored as soon as humanly possible. So that's the quick recap there. I do have a question for David and for Howard. I have a client where they had complete flood damage, and the damages, they're certainly in the six figures, deep into the six figures, and they contacted a PA, and the PA said, you know what, this is a little bit too small for me, I think you should just handle this on your own. And the client told me about this, and I was like, you know what, I think you need to start shopping around for more different PAs, that you only spoke to two, and this is too much of a risk. So my direct question to you is there a threshold amount of what's a small claim that's too small to use a PA?
Yeah, from past experience, when it's a slow season,
When it's a slow season for a public adjuster, mild winter, right? They're not, they'll take anything. This was unusual. I've talked to several public adjusting firms through the course of the storm. A lot of them said, no residential, can't take it, too busy. I'm taking claims that are, $1 million, $3 million, $40 million, and that's what they want. So you're hard pressed to get good representation for a public adjuster, by a public adjuster in a scenario like this. Is it a commercial claim or a residential claim?
It's multiple dwellings, an apartment building.
Yeah, I mean, as things get sifted through now and public adjusters start to become more available, there is a reference that you can go. I think it's the New York Public Insurance Adjusters Association. You can go online and look for other resources. I mean, look, there's a lot of public adjusters out there.
Howard, when you say commercial or residential, you're talking about a private home, or you're talking about apartment buildings?
Well, it's funny because when you say a residential loss, that's like a private home.
Yeah,
but a commercial loss would be in a co-op condo, multi-story, multi-family dwelling. That's considered a commercial loss for a public adjuster.
So just wanted to...
But again, they want a larger number now because they can be choosing.
Well, that's like everybody, because it's the relationship and...
Exactly, and that's what I was going to add, is that I think in that situation, and these public adjusters are certainly being taxed now. I mean, they are busy. But, if you contact someone who may have relationships with a public adjuster, like a law firm or accounting firm, property management firm, your client may, get more attention. So, we can certainly recommend some public adjusters to you.
That's right. And be nice to your public adjuster. Treat them as a friend all year long. Okay, so we have one question. You want to?
Yes, have you seen the pursuit of tax avoidance based on now flood state
because of what has happened in the properties. It's desirable, there's a diminution in value because of that, and therefore the tax appeals.
So you're talking tax assessment coming up, how it's going to change because the value of the property, okay, one fast and then...
I'll answer that. I'm not a tax certiorari attorney. My first answer would be good luck with that. However, you could see that argument being made by the tax cert attorneys who do this and who submit appeals. I certainly could see that happening. I just wrote an article. I represent a lot of institutional clients, like investment banks on their build-outs and things like that. I could tell you what I hear in-house property managers talking about is when leases come up for renewal, are they going to be kind of weighing against Lower Manhattan given what has happened? A lot of these investment banks have been hit really hard. Some of them still have temporary locations outside of New York City. So, you see things like that being factored in. So if that is the case, and more large institutional clients leave Lower Manhattan, you could certainly see property owners making that argument.
Thank you. Erwin Cohen?
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to make a comment because we were not able to get a CPA to be part of our panel this morning, but not being an accountant, if you or your properties have experienced some losses, then that kind of documentation and the communication, insurance adjustments, and any other claims that are being processed, you should pass on to your CPA because there may be an element of property loss and taxation that might be beneficial to your clients in terms of how the taxes are prepared at the end of the year. And that you should talk to the applicable CPA on your co-op condo or investment property. Just a comment.
Thank you. And just one correction. The CPA is slotted for part 2. That's the last Wednesday in February.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Thank you. Now, any other speakers have one moment shining comment before, or you're going to take personal questions from the audience once we break up? That it? Good. Thank you everyone for being here. I just want to call attention. We have 3 exhibitors today: Epic Security, Pepco Energy Products, and Citywide Fire Sprinkler, so please stop by their tables. We also have a fresh batch of hot knishes and hot coffee, so please stay and mingle for a while. Everyone is here for you. So, and speakers, if you could stay right here for a moment. Helen's going to take a picture, and Greg has one closing comment.
Yep. As we all know, we have not lived underneath the rock. In Washington, there's a big tug of war about this financial cliff. Well, we have a similar problem up in Albany. The co-op condo tax abatement, I can tell you 2 things about it. Number 1, the Department of Finance has put on the tax abatement for the January bills. So when you get your January bills, the co-op tax abatement will be there. Number 2, because of what's going on up in Albany, the popular thinking is, will this tax abatement be passed? And the answer is, even from the co-op condo community lobbyists, is we don't know. But and I can assure you, they are not coming back for a special session, which we wanted. So it's going to be up to the new Albany legislature to take this up. I just want, so there will be on your tax bill in January, and we'll keep you up to date if anything happens next year up in Albany with the co-op condo tax abatement. Thank you.
Question, Greg. Is that part of the STAR?
STAR will continually, that's a state program, STAR will continue. It's the co-op condo tax abatement portion.
Thank you.